Again, this is the second video on solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we have to use the quadratic formula because they're asking us to find the roots of x squared minus 6x minus 19, and it is not factorable. There are no factors of 19 that when you multiply them together will give you a negative 19, and when you sum them will give you a negative 6. So with the quadratic formula in standard form set equal to 0, we have a is 1, b is negative 6, and c is negative 19. So going ahead and plugging those into, or using substitution, taking negative b, which is going to be a positive 6, plus or minus, that's where our two solutions are built into. The negative 6 squared, that value is negative, so I put that in parentheses to make sure that when I square root it, it comes, not square root it, but when I square it, it comes out as a positive. This step you should show the substitution, but then you could go ahead and just put your discriminant in to your calculator by using the store feature, storing 1 in for A, negative 6 in for B, negative 19 in for C, and then typing b squared minus 4 times A times C in. Now if you do that, you could go ahead and skip this next step, which I am going to show, just so you could see it written out completely. But I have negative 6 squared, that's going to be a positive 36. And then I have negative 4 times 1, which is a positive, or a negative 4 times a negative 19, that's a positive 76. 2 times 1 is 2. So again, that's a step you could skip if you were to put the discriminant right into your calculator to get the 112. So again, that's the discriminant, and the discriminant is a non-perfect square, so we are going to have two irrational solutions. If it was a perfect square, it would have been able to be factored, and we'd get two rational solutions. So now this is about as difficult as it could get using the quadratic formula, because I actually am going to be able to simplify the square root of 112. So you usually do not know whether you could do that. You just have to work it to see if it's simplified, if it can be simplified or not. If it can, then you should go on. If it can't, you leave the solutions like we did in the last problem. And I believe, I apologize, this is number 3 on the worksheet, not number 1. So in number 1 we didn't have to simplify it, but in number 3 we're going to. So I have the 112 taken to the side, and I need to find the largest perfect square that goes evenly into 112. And this is just a matter of trial and error. You have to just go through this process to make sure you get the simplified answer. So 112 actually has a perfect square as a factor, which is 16, and 16 divides evenly into 112 7 times. So I did not change the value of that square root of 112. Its two factors are square root of 16 and the square root of 7. So if I multiply the square root of 16 times the square root of 7, I will get the square root of 112. So I'm not changing the value, I'm just rewriting it in its simplified form. Because the square root of 16 can be taken out, 16 is a perfect square, I'm going to take that out, that becomes a 4. 7 is not a perfect square, that stays in. Just to double check to make sure that you're not taking a right answer and making a wrong answer by not simplifying correctly, just do a quick check in your calculator to make sure the square root of 112 and 4 square root 7 match in decimals. Now the decimal values are not exact answers. You should never put them as an answer unless they ask for you to round it, which the next example we're actually going to do that, but only because they ask us. If they don't say to round it, then you keep it in square root form. Now I am going to rewrite this as 6 plus or minus 4 square root 7 over 2. Because 2 will divide evenly into both 6 and 4, I have to take one more step and divide that 2 into both those terms. I have two terms on the top of that fraction, or in the numerator of that fraction, 6 and 4 square root 7, because that 2, the denominator, divides evenly into the 6 3 times and evenly into the 4 2 times. I simplify that as 3 plus 2 square root 7. And again, you could do this check with these two right here to make sure that those decimal values match. That will guarantee that you have the right answer, as well as putting in 3 plus 2 square root 7 into your calculator with this quadratic equation to make sure you get a true, and then 3 minus 2 square root 7 to make sure you get your second true. That will guarantee you your answers. Again, this is the most difficult of having to solve a quadratic using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula should be fairly simple because it is just a matter of using the formula that's given to you, identifying your A, B, and C, putting them into your graphing calculator. The work comes into having to simplify. So if you are a little unsure, you should rewatch the video until you make sure you feel comfortable with this concept.